Today in class we left off talking about the explorer in the Ming Dynasty named Zheng He, spelled Zhenghe. This man was raised a Muslim. His grandfather and his father had both taken trips to Mecca. He was part of the Hui people, spelled Hui, which is a group of ethnic Muslims living in China. His people were captured by the Ming after the fall of the Yan Empire, the one that the Mongolians were ruling. When he was captured, he was castrated and he was entered into the imperial service. So he began serving in the Ming government. He entered the service of a prince by the name of Zhu Di, Zhudi, and this man is later going to become Emperor Yongli. The prince later becomes Emperor Yongli. So he's one of the emperors of the Ming Dynasty's right-hand men. He became a military expert. He was a maritime explorer. The boat that he had is featured in the image here, the Chinese junk that we talked about already when we were studying the Song Dynasty. The Chinese junk was over 440 feet long, and you can look at a European boat of the time. This is a Spanish caravel, a boat like Vasco da Gama would have had, which was only about 100 feet in length. So the size of his boats vastly dominated the ones that the Europeans had. These ships were enormous. He would take his voyages. He went on 7 maritime expeditions. He went to places. He traveled all throughout the South China Sea, the Indian Ocean, the Persian Gulf, even the Red Sea. The fact that he's a Muslim is going to give him great success when he goes to areas like the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf and comes in contact with Muslims. The fact that he himself is a Muslim is going to give him great success when he's trying to set up tribute states for the Ming Empire. He led 7 maritime expeditions altogether throughout his service in the imperial during his time in the imperial service, and each of these voyages carried about 25,000 men each. The one single junk boat could not carry 25,000 men, so he would take several junks, and there would be other boats that would come with him. But the goal was, if we roll in with as many people as we can to a new area, they will submit to us, and we can set up a tributary state. So he had great advantage with being a Muslim. As he traveled throughout these, he would slaughter anybody who resisted him. And so this is going to strike fear into people, and people are going to catch on to this when they see the Chinese come into a new area, and they're going to submit to their authority and pay tribute to them. All of a sudden, the voyages just stop. The voyages don't last very long. We're going to read a primary source in the next class about Zheng He, talking about his voyages and details and things like that. But an important question to ask is, why do the voyages stop all of a sudden? If they were successful, if the Chinese were dominating, then why do the voyages stop? As a matter of fact, we're going to do a DBQ about that's going to be called Why Europe and Why Not China. When we study why the Europeans were dominating, a DBQ we're going to look at is going to ask the question, why not the Chinese? Why is it that the Europeans become the dominant force in the world with exploration, and why not the Chinese if the Chinese had a vast, superior navy? Well, I have 3 answers to this. Number 1, during the Ming Empire, we see a resurgence of the Mongolians trying to fight against the Mings to reclaim some of the land that they had lost. So a focus in the Ming Empire is going to switch from naval expeditions to wanting to fight the Mongolians. So they stop putting a lot of their resources towards these naval expeditions so that they can fight the Mongolians. Number 2, they were not as profitable as they seemed. The amount of money that it took to get these voyages going, the money that they were bringing in didn't outweigh enough the money that they were spending. And so a way that you can say this is that the voyages were not very economically profitable. And also, most likely, these voyages were most likely a personal project of Emperor Yongli. And when Emperor Yongli dies, his personal projects dies as well. This is not the end of seafaring in China, but it is the end of these big, massive explorations and tributary states that the Chinese are trying to set up. Technology and population. The Ming saw a decline in technological advancements. Mainly this is because they start to focus more internal and they're not coming in contact with as many outsiders, and so there isn't a transfer of knowledge like there once was in China. So the civil service exams get reestablished, and so the focus doesn't become on advancing themselves. The focus is the people that are dedicating themselves to knowledge and things like that in the Ming Empire are only focusing on the civil service exams so that they can gain a position in the government. During the Ming Empire, the Koreans and the Japanese are going to surpass the Chinese in technological advancements. We'll talk about those in just a little bit. The Ming, however, was a period of great wealth in China and culture, Chinese culture. This is where we get a lot of the porcelain that is a legacy in China, the silk, furniture, things like that. Now we need to turn our attention now to Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Korea, which is known as Koryo, Koryo, when the Mongolians are controlling them, they joined the Mongolians through marriage, and so Korea was a tributary state to the Mongolians. But when the Yuan Empire collapses, the Koreans gain power for themselves, and they set up a new empire, a new Korean empire called the Yi, spelled Y-I, Empire in Korea. The Koreans are going to have a lot of technological advancements during this time period. The Yi Empire is from 1231 to about 1500. The advancements that they have, movable type, make sure you turn your attention to page 364 of the textbook. There's an image of the movable type, and they give some good detail in the image with a little insert of a paragraph that talks about the movable type. Make sure you read that, take some notes on that. Calendars become more advanced and more accurate. The use of fertilizer, reservoirs, storage place for water, patrol ships with mounted cannons. The Koreans are going to use those. Gunpowder. They're going to have arrow launchers. The gunpowder is going to power these arrow launchers, and armored ships. And so I think later we're going to talk about these turtle boats, or what they're going to be known as, and they're going to put this protective armored shell over these Korean boats. And we're going to see this again during the Civil War. Look at boats like the Monitor Merrimack, the boats that had the armor-clad ships. During the Yi Empire, the cotton is the biggest cash crop. Japanese. After the Mongolians, we got an image here, the Mongolians have two failed attempts at attacking Japan. The second time they tried to attack Japan, all their boats are destroyed during a typhoon. The result of this, the Japanese are fearful of this because this is the first time that people have really tried to come and attack them. And so remember, the Japanese before this, they had never adopted the Chinese walled cities because they didn't really feel threatened by outsiders. But with the Mongolian attempts of attacking them, they start to feel threatened by outsiders. And so they start fortifying and building defenses in Japan, walled cities and things like that. But the most important thing that comes about this is they establish a warrior elite class that they feel is the best thing to protect them from attacks from outsiders. And so they get leaders called shoguns, which are equivalent to lords, and then the samurais become the warrior class. And so this is where we see Japanese feudalism really coming into play. Just to wrap it up, Vietnam, sorry, that's not for this class. That's for this. Vietnam, really what you need to know, Annam, A-N-N-A-M, is the group that is in northern Vietnam. Champa is a group that is in South Vietnam. These two groups were both controlled by the Mongolians, and they were tributary states of the Mongolians. But these Vietnamese, the northern Vietnamese, the Annam, and the southern Vietnamese, the Champa, they, after the Mongolians are taken over, they are going to have conflict with one another, and the Annam are going to take over the Champa, and the Annam are going to form a unified Vietnam. And that is all that we have for the notes for Chapter 12. Next class, we'll look at that primary source on Zheng He, and we will take a look at chapter 13.